The official designation was a neurological cascade event, a sanitized term for a catastrophic system failure induced by an undetectable external stimulus. But for Ranger Marcus Klein, kneeling in the damp, moss-covered earth of April Woods Sector 7, it felt like the very fabric of reality was being torn apart inside his skull. It started not as a noise, but as a pressure, a deep, visceral vibration that bypassed the eardrum entirely and resonated directly against the temporal lobe. Klein's body camera footage, which we secured through a highly confidential leak from the Department of Interior's Incident Archive, shows the precise moment the entity made contact. At 3:17 hours, the night vision lens, already shaky from the Ranger's increasing panic, suddenly dipped sharply, capturing only the swirling mist and the trunk of a massive, ancient cedar. Then the sound begins. It is not the roar of a jet engine or the crack of thunder. It is an ultra-low frequency hum, technically infrasound, registering far below the threshold of human hearing, yet the mic capsule on the body cam, designed for environmental recording, begins to clip violently, indicating a massive, sustained acoustic energy spike. The audio file, classified level Alpha 7, contains a signature unlike anything ever documented in acoustic physics, a non-repeating, self-correcting wave pattern that seems to follow the contour of the local subterranean granite, almost using the earth itself as a resonating chamber. The visual element of the footage shows Klein gripping his head, dropping his rifle, and then a truly terrifying sequence. The ground around his boots begins to shimmer. It's not an optical illusion. The moist soil and low-lying ferns are visibly vibrating, subjected to such intense, low hertz pressure that they briefly enter a state of forced oscillation. Klein, who is a decorated veteran with 18 years of service and numerous hostile environment deployments, collapses not from fear, but from systematic internal disruption. The autopsy report, which we will not show in full, reveals microhemorrhaging in the middle ear and the delicate capillaries surrounding the cochlea, consistent with acute barotrauma, yet there was no measurable change in atmospheric pressure. The only explanation, according to the classified debriefing notes of the responding EMT team, was that Ranger Klein had been subjected to pure, focused acoustic energy, a targeted sonic weapon. But who, or what, possesses the technology and the motive to deploy a weapon of such focused, neurological destruction deep within the guarded seclusion of April Woods? This incident, known internally as Echo Bloom Zero, was the terrifying gateway into the reality of the unexplained sonic entity, a phenomenon that doesn't just make noise, but fundamentally changes the state of matter and mind around it. We are entering the acoustic exclusion zone, where silence is the only lie. The institutional cover-up began almost immediately after the extraction of Ranger Klein's body, or what was left of his neurological capacity. Our investigation required deep access into the April Woods archives, specifically the Department of Energy, DOE, files relating to seismic mapping, which were coincidentally, or perhaps deliberately, merged with the National Park Service incident logs in 2017. The key piece of evidence we managed to secure is a redacted internal memo, Form 33A, titled Subacoustic Displacement Event Confirmation. This form confirms that the signature captured by Klein's body camera was simultaneously logged by 3 separate, high-sensitivity seismic arrays designed to monitor tectonic activity near the woods. Dr. Helena Vance, an acoustic physicist who initially worked for the DOE before becoming a highly critical independent contractor, reviewed the data for us under extreme non-disclosure agreements. Dr. Vance testified that the frequency measured was consistently between 3.5 Hz and 6.2 Hz, the lower end of the infrasonic scale. She explained that while many natural phenomena, such as large waves, migrating whales, or distant storms, can generate infrasound, this specific signature was unique because of its coherence dash. Natural sounds diffuse quickly. This sound remained focused and directional, suggesting either an immense power source or a highly advanced form of waveform shaping. Dr. Vance highlighted a specific anomaly in the wave pattern, a brief, 3-second segment within the recording that contained a higher, almost impossible harmonic overtone, up to 18,000 Hz, layered perfectly upon the low-frequency bass. This is the crucial finding. A low-frequency event cannot naturally generate such a high-frequency ghost echo. It implies a synthesis, a controlled generation of sound. The government response, documented in a heavily censored Summary of Findings report, simply labeled the event as deep subterranean gas expansion, a classic bureaucratic deflection intended to suggest natural, non-threatening geological activity. However, the report fails to explain why gas expansion would generate a 3-second perfect high harmonic spike. Dr. Vance theorized that the entity, or device, utilizes the massive subterranean granite shelf beneath April Woods as a natural transducer, amplifying and focusing the low-frequency energy. This not only explains the localized damage, but also why the sound appears to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. This echo bloom is not merely noise, it is a meticulously crafted energy projection, utilizing the very geology of April Woods as its weapon platform, a detail the official record desperately seeks to bury under layers of seismic misinformation and convenient geological scapegoats. The sheer technological sophistication implied by the echo bloom signature immediately drew the attention of specialized military branches, particularly the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, USACE, and their clandestine acoustic warfare division, known only by the designation Project Cerberus. Cerberus was established in the late 1980s specifically to investigate and weaponize naturally occurring low-frequency phenomena for non-lethal crowd control and structural debilitation. Our secure documents include a heavily redacted memorandum from the 1994 USACE Internal Review, explicitly mentioning the deployment of Acoustic Signature Mitigation Teams, ESMTs, into April Woods Sector 7. This proves that the military was not just aware of the phenomenon, but actively attempting to interact with it, either to study its properties or to develop countermeasures. The memo, stamped Eyes Only, Directorate of Special Projects, details multiple failed mitigation attempts, describing the unknown source as exhibiting intelligent and adaptive directional response. This is a seismic admission. The acoustic energy was reacting to their efforts, adjusting its frequency, power, or direction to bypass their dampening techniques. Military denial, however, remains absolute. Officially, they claim Project Cerberus was disbanded in 2001 and never operated within national park land. Yet, we have testimony from a former Cerberus operative, designated Source Delta, who confirmed their missions were focused on mapping what they termed directional acoustic stressors (DS). Source Delta described the woods as being fundamentally alive with the sound, stating that the sheer force of the infrasound often caused their sophisticated monitoring equipment, specifically their high-grade seismometers and spectrum analyzers, to suffer catastrophic mechanical failures, literally shaking the sensitive components apart. He recounted one mission where 3 members of his 4-man team experienced severe disorientation, nausea, and persistent auditory hallucinations that lasted for weeks after extraction, symptoms directly matching those of Ranger Klein, but less severe due to their specialized protective gear. Source Delta provided us with a single, highly technical schematic, a diagram of a massive, deeply buried structure near the geographic epicenter of Sector 7, labeled Subterranean Resonator Array. He claimed this structure was discovered by Cerberus, not built by them, and that its purpose seemed to be the focusing and broadcasting of the sonic energy. If this structure is indeed an ancient, unknown apparatus, or perhaps the remains of an early Cold War acoustic research project, the implications are terrifying. The military knows exactly what is generating the sound, and their immediate, aggressive classification suggests they either fear its power or fear the public discovery of its true origin, which might be far older and far more sentient than any human technology. The true horror of the echo bloom is often realized not through pristine lab recordings, but through the visceral, distorted reality captured by amateur technology. We managed to obtain several fragments of recovered digital media, primarily cell phone footage abandoned by unlucky hikers who strayed into the acoustic exclusion zone. The most compelling, though hardest to watch, is a 47-second clip recovered from a waterproof case belonging to a group of university students investigating local wildlife myths. The footage is profoundly shaky, characteristic of panic and rapid movement, But the microphone tells a chilling story. The initial 10 seconds are ordinary forest ambience, birds, wind, distant traffic. Then, the silence drops. Abruptly, all environmental noise ceases, as if a switch was thrown, indicating the immense pressure wave has silenced every tiny natural vibration. The visual evidence is minimal but impactful. Watch the large pool of collected rainwater in the foreground. At the 15-second mark, before any audible sound registers to the human ear, which the students later confirmed, the surface of the water begins to ripple violently, not from wind or impact, but from consistent, rhythmic internal displacement. It looks exactly like the result of placing a powerful subwoofer directly beneath the container. The camera holder, identified only as Subject Gamma, emits a series of strained breaths, which the analysis confirmed were hyperventilation triggered by neurological distress, not physical exertion. Crucially, the camera microphone, even while peaking and clipping, captures the distinct presence of the infrasound, but layered over it is a faint, almost subliminal ticking noise. Dr. Vance, our acoustic expert, spent 70 hours running complex deconvolution filters on this ticking. She determined it wasn't mechanical, but seemed to be a series of extremely rapid microbursts of high-frequency white noise, a kind of sonic shrapnel riding the main wave. This is where the entity earns its name. The sound is not a monolith. It's a composite, a complex structure designed to stress both the deep neurological systems and the conscious mind simultaneously. The footage ends abruptly when Subject Gamma screams, not a scream of terror, but a sharp, high-pitched cry of pure pain, and the phone drops. When the team recovered the device, they noted the camera lens housing had cracked, not from impact, but from internal pressure stress, a subtle, yet terrifying indication of the physical force generated by the echo bloom. The shaky, chaotic amateur footage provides a raw, undeniable confirmation that the phenomenon is focused, physical, and capable of generating localized, destructive forces far exceeding anything natural, turning the very air into a focused, invisible weapon. The true measure of the sonic entity's horror lies not in the physical damage it inflicts, but the psychological abyss it leaves behind in those who survive prolonged exposure. The phenomenon, officially diagnosed by military psychiatrists working under classified review as bioresonant frequency despair, induces catastrophic mental states. We secured several interview transcripts from Dr. Elias Thorne, a respected behavioral neurologist who specialized in sensory deprivation trauma before being recruited by the shadowy Directorate of Public Health, DPH, to evaluate survivors. Dr. Thorne described the survivors, whom he referred to as the listeners, as exhibiting three distinct phases of decline. Phase 1. Acute auditory hypersensitivity. Everything, from a dropped pin to distant conversation, becomes amplified and painful. This is the brain compensating for the initial low-frequency overload. Phase 2. The phantom chimes. This is the persistent, non-existent auditory hallucination of the sound itself, not the low-frequency drone, but the high harmonic, ticking, or chime discovered in the hiker footage. Patients describe it as a constant, crystalline whisper located just behind the frontal lobe, repeating unintelligible, rhythmic sequences. Phase 3, and the most devastating, deep, existential detachment. Dr. Thorne noted that every survivor, regardless of previous mental health history, expressed the profound belief that the sound had informed them of a fundamental, terrifying truth about the universe, a truth they could not articulate, but which rendered all previous human endeavor pointless and hollow. One survivor, a former botanist named Eleanor Dawes, attempted to explain it, stating, "It wasn't noise, it was structure. It was the blueprint for something ancient and vast, and once you hear it, you realize we are just incidental noise on its porch." This level of systematic, existential despair suggests the sound is not random. It conveys information, and that information is utterly destructive to the human psyche. The question then is why? Is the echo bloom a natural distress signal from the planet, Or is it a calculated transmission designed to invoke exactly this level of mental dissolution? Consider the sheer power required to systematically reprogram the neurological pathways of multiple individuals simultaneously. What if the very act of hearing, it is the mechanism by which it seeds itself into the consciousness, making the listener a permanent amplifier for the despair it carries? The implications extend far beyond a simple cryptid sighting or acoustic anomaly. We are looking at a system of psychological warfare deployed from an unknown source within the depths of April woods. Before we proceed into the deep geological connection that sustains this entity, I want to ask you, the viewer, something critical. If you were forced to confront a truth so profound and horrifying that it erased all meaning from your life, would you choose to hear it? Or would you live in blissful ignorance? Share your thoughts, and if you or anyone you know has experienced unexplained auditory phenomena, especially low-frequency pressure, please share those experiences respectfully in the comments below. Your input helps us map the unseen terror. The focus of the investigation quickly pivoted from the atmospheric effects to the subterranean architecture of April woods. To sustain an infrasonic projection of this magnitude, which causes localized seismic activity, the source must be anchored deep within the Earth's crust, utilizing the highest density materials for stability and resonance. We contacted Dr. Alastair Finch, a retired geological surveyor who had previously been dismissed from the USGS for his unorthodox theories regarding tectonic resonance zones. Dr. Finch, operating now in isolation, provided us with highly compelling proprietary data linking the geographical locus of the echo bloom to a deep earth fault line running perpendicular to an unusual, massive deposit of high-purity quartz and iron ore. Quartz, as Dr. Finch explained, is piezoelectric. It generates an electric charge when subjected to mechanical stress and, conversely, vibrates mechanically when an electric field is applied. Dr. Finch's radical theory posits that the specific alignment and density of the April woods quartz deposit creates a colossal, natural piezoelectric generator capable of converting localized, minute tectonic stresses, the slow friction of the plates, into concentrated sonic energy. But this natural generator needs a conductor, a focusing element. This brings us back to the subterranean resonator array hinted at by Source Delta. Dr. Finch believes that either an ancient civilization or a covert modern military operation discovered this natural generator and built a massive focusing structure around it, a sort of continental tuning fork. He produced thermal imaging scans, highly difficult to interpret, that showed a consistent, geometrically perfect heat signature emanating from approximately 4,000 feet beneath Sector 7, far deeper than any commercial drilling operation would reach. This signature, Dr. Finch claimed, suggests massive, sustained energy cycling, consistent with a power source utilizing the Earth's own movement. He stressed that the entity might not be creating the energy, but merely harnessing and shaping it. This explains the adaptive nature reported by Project Cerberus. If the sound is powered by natural, immense geological forces, trying to mitigate it with conventional technology is akin to placing a tin shield against a volcano. The power source is inexhaustible. Dr. Finch's final, chilling contribution was his belief that the sound is cyclical, corresponding precisely to the subtle, millennial shifts in the regional tectonic plate pressure. He estimated that the next peak energy cycle, where the sound will reach maximum intensity, is due within the next 18 months. If his calculations are correct, the neurological cascade event that claimed Ranger Klein was merely a small tremor before a catastrophic, sonic earthquake that could affect every living organism within a 200-mile radius of April woods, turning the entire region into a psychological and physical acoustic exclusion zone. The terrifying reports from the official investigators paint a picture of physical and mental collapse, but the most unsettling insights come from the fringe witnesses, the long-term inhabitants of the periphery of April woods, the listeners, who claim not to be harmed by the echo bloom, but enlightened by it. These individuals, often dismissed as hermits, survivalists, or victims of paranoid schizophrenia, have lived near Sector 7 for decades and claim to have adapted to the pressure. We managed to secure an interview with an elderly man known only as Silas, who lives in a decaying cabin several miles from the established acoustic exclusion zone perimeter. Silas did not appear delusional. He was clear, sharp, and profoundly unsettling. He told us the sound is not noise at all, but the earth breathing music. Silas claimed that initially, the sound was terrifying and painful, causing weeks of blinding migraines, but over time, his body began to synchronize with the frequency. He claimed he could now not only tolerate the infrasound but interpret the high harmonic ticking component, the phantom chime, as rhythmic communication. He calls the source the deep organist. Silas directed us to a remote, unmarked location within the woods, far off any known trail, where he claimed the sound was most intense, a large, oddly carved granite outcropping he termed the Whispering Stone. According to Silas, indigenous local lore holds that this stone is an anchor point where the voice of the sleeping mountain speaks to the unworthy. When we approached the location, our camera operator reported immediate, intense pressure behind the eyes. We deployed our high-sensitivity parabolic microphone, heavily dampened to filter ambient noise. What we recorded was unlike anything else in the archive. The low-frequency hum was present, but directly emanating from the stone itself. We captured what sounded precisely like rhythmic, extremely slow pulse-width modulation, a synthetic, manufactured rhythm played at an impossible speed. It was not human language, but it possessed structure and intent. Silas, standing calmly near the stone, claimed the sound was warning us. Warning us of what? He smiled, a truly chilling expression, and said the deep organist was tuning the world. He said the shift in frequency, the drift toward the audible range discussed in Part 9, was an escalation. It was preparation. Preparation for a change in perception that humans were biologically unready to handle. His sanity is undeniably questionable, but his detailed knowledge of the sound's technical properties, frequencies, and directionality, details only Dr. Vance and Project Cerberus should know, lends a horrifying credibility to his claims. The idea that this sonic entity is not a mindless wave, but a conscious, communicating force, fundamentally alters the entire nature of the April Woods mystery. Following the initial disastrous extraction of Ranger Klein and the subsequent failure of the standard investigative teams, the military and associated black-budget agencies launched their most aggressive attempt to neutralize or retrieve the sonic source. This operation, codenamed Fugue State, took place in late 1998 and involved a specialized, small deployment force equipped with cutting-edge acoustic dampening gear and bespoke sound frequency cancellation technology. The leaked after-action report for Fugue State is a masterpiece of technical failure and bureaucratic obfuscation. The mission objectives were simple: penetrate the acoustic core, identify the source, either the rumored structure or the hypothesized geological anomaly, and deploy a proprietary counter-frequency broadcast designed to collapse the echo bloom's waveform coherence. The four-man team, referred to only as the Phasers, was equipped with custom-built, heavily shielded suits capable of neutralizing infrasound up to 10 Hz and a backpack-mounted, high-powered inverse waveform generator. Within 45 minutes of breaching the established perimeter, contact with the Phasers was lost. When a highly reinforced retrieval team was sent in 6 hours later, they found 3 members of the Phasers physically intact but severely incapacitated, suffering from immediate, acute psychosis, screaming about the gears grinding. The 4th member, team leader Major Thorne, no relation to Dr. Elias Thorne, was missing. What was recovered, however, was the primary inverse waveform generator, which had suffered catastrophic internal failure. The report notes that the generator's sophisticated logic board, designed to calculate and broadcast the destructive counterfrequency, had instead inverted and amplified the native signature, creating a devastating sonic feedback loop that was far more destructive than the original echo bloom. In essence, the attempt to silence the entity only taught it a new, more powerful way to express itself. The report suggests the entity somehow analyzed the complex counterfrequency, understood its intent, and then turned the team's own technology against them. The retrieval team noted that the internal components of the generator, primarily high-density copper coils, were warped and melted, consistent with sudden, massive current overload, but the external battery pack was found to be fully charged. The energy source that destroyed the machine came from the sound itself, suggesting the echo bloom can not only generate physical force, but also manipulate electrical energy through resonant induction. Major Thorne, the missing team leader, was never officially found. However, our investigation uncovered a chilling addendum filed by the retrieval team's psychiatrist, a handwritten note claiming that before disappearing, Thorne was observed engraving symbols into a large tree trunk using only his bare fingernails. The symbols, sketched in the margin of the leaked report, perfectly matched the strange, rhythmic pulse captured by our parabolic microphone near the Whispering Stone, the very music Silas claimed to hear. It appears the entity didn't just silence the mission, it psychologically recruited its commander, transforming him into a devotee and, perhaps, an active transmitter. The evolution of the sonic entity, the Echo Bloom, is the most alarming development in the April Woods file. For decades, the phenomenon was confined to the deep infrasonic range, causing internal barotrauma and neurological stress, without overtly entering the human audible spectrum. Its weapon was subtlety and duration. However, starting around 2012, recorded incident reports from the periphery of Sector 7 began mentioning something new, a sudden, brief, and intensely jarring auditory event. Our analysis of the combined datasets from both the USGS seismic monitors and independent amateur recordings confirms a critical shift. The phenomenon is experiencing frequency drift, rapidly escalating from the deep subacoustic realm, 3 to 10 Hz, toward the low to mid audible range, 100 to 500 Hz. This means the sound is no longer just felt, it is increasingly being heard. Witnesses describe this audible manifestation not as a recognizable noise, but as a moment of absolute, impossible sonic perfection, a chord composed of multiple, harmonically impossible frequencies played simultaneously. One witness, a surveyor who accidentally crossed the boundary, described it as hearing every musical note ever created, all perfectly tuned, and all played at once, causing a physical impossibility that made my eyes stream with tears and blood. This shift suggests the echo bloom is becoming more powerful, or perhaps less concerned with remaining hidden. Dr. Vance, examining the new spectral analyses, noted that the sound is now consistently hitting a frequency corresponding precisely to the resonant frequency of the human ribcage and sternum. The implications are horrifying. The entity is no longer just targeting the brain, but the major organs, potentially causing cardiac arrest or respiratory collapse through pure sonic resonance. The escalating threat forced the Directorate of Public Health, DPH, to authorize the construction of massive, deeply buried concrete and lead containment walls around Sector 7, masqueraded publicly as ecological restoration projects. Our drone footage, taken before the DPH secured the airspace, clearly shows these massive, subterranean fortifications, structures clearly designed to contain something far more volatile than geological instability. Why the escalation? If the entity is a geological mechanism, perhaps Dr. Finch's prediction of the peak energy cycle is already proving true. If it is a conscious entity, the shift from silent psychological stress to overt, physical threat suggests the beginning of an aggressive, calculated broadcast, preparing the ground, literally and figuratively, for whatever comes next. The final, terrifying piece of data from the 2018 archives is a note from an anonymous DPH acoustic engineer, simply stating, "It is learning our frequencies. We taught it by trying to silence it. Soon, it will speak to us in a language we cannot ignore, and our biological defenses will be useless." The entity is no longer an anomaly. It is an emerging, powerful intelligence operating purely through sonic physics. The relentless evolution of the echo bloom presents a profound, unanswered question that sits at the terrifying core of the April Woods files. Is the sonic entity an aggressive weapon, or is it merely a natural, overwhelming presence whose mere existence is inherently destructive to fragile human biology? We return to the secure archives one final time, focusing on the historical records that predate the official incident reports. The most telling document is a faded microfiche from the 1950s, detailing a rudimentary logging survey of Sector 7. The surveyors, armed with basic seismic equipment used to map forest density, noted an area of impossible resonance, where their tools registered sustained, non-weather-related acoustic energy. The report attributed the readings to faulty analog equipment. However, included in the appendix is a hand-drawn sketch by the lead surveyor, detailing what he called the deep hum. The drawing shows a series of interlocking geometric shapes that bear a startling resemblance to the symbols later etched by the missing major thorn and the rhythmic pulses captured near the whispering stone. This suggests the echo bloom is not a modern phenomenon or a recent military accident, but a timeless geological constant, a permanent, resonant feature of this specific portion of April Woods, periodically cycling through its phases of energy broadcast. The terror lies in the realization that humanity has merely stumbled upon a fundamental law of physics specific to this location, a law that is indifferent to human life. Imagine the Earth is a musical instrument, and April Woods is the single, massive organ pipe that sustains an eternal, low note. We, arriving late to the concert, are simply too weak to endure the vibration. The shaky footage and the catastrophic neurological events are merely the collateral damage of a system operating on a scale too vast for comprehension. Our investigation concludes with the sobering understanding that the government is not actively protecting us from a monster. They are trying desperately to contain a natural force they mistakenly attempted to control, only succeeding in provoking its escalation. The containment efforts, the lead-line bunkers, and the disinformation campaigns are not about hiding a secret. They are about delaying an inevitable cataclysm caused by an entity that exists in a state of continuous, acoustic expression. The April Woods echo bloom remains active, generating frequencies that challenge the very stability of human life. And as the energy cycle peaks, the silence we seek will soon be shattered by a noise we cannot survive. The trees sway, the earth vibrates, and somewhere beneath the granite shelf, the deep organist continues its inexorable, lethal tuning of the world, reminding us how thin the membrane is between safety and pure, physical disintegration in the face of the truly unexplained. This is where the file closes, but the sound continues to resonate through the deep structure of the forest and the fearful minds of those who dare to listen. We stand at the precipice of a full acoustic exposure, and the world remains completely unaware of the approaching sonic reckoning that began with a single, lethal hum in the dark woods. We will continue to monitor the frequencies, seeking the truth behind the terrifying music of April Woods and the fate of those who are forced to hear it. The pursuit of truth, especially when that truth is terrifying, is relentless. If the story of the sonic entity touched your mind and resonated with your deepest fears, please subscribe to April Woods Top_Secret and ensure you have notifications activated. We exist to bring these shadow files into the light, but only with your help can we continue to expose the terrifying realities lurking just beyond the edge of perception. We will meet again, where the secrets are darkest and the truth is the most dangerous artifact of all.